Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Real Estate Rockstars. My name is Justin Nimergood, and today I'm joined by a wonderful guest, someone that's an absolute rock star in their own, Mr. Adam Chronister. Just a little bit about Adam before we turn the mic over to him. He's a growth-minded entrepreneur who leveraged his expertise in digital marketing to build a thriving multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. As the founder of Enleaf, a performance-driven marketing agency, Adam uses his success in business as a springboard to invest in long-term cash flow rental properties, primarily through the Pacific Northwest. With strong focus on buy and hold strategies, Adam's portfolio has expanded to include residential and vacation rental properties. Most notably, he recently acquired and transformed a coastal property in Costa Rica into a high-performing vacation rental. This venture not only marketed a geographic expansion of his investments, but also deepened his involvement in the travel and hospitality industry. Drawing on years of experience helping travel-focused brands grow, Adam authored The New Era of Travel, Transforming Vacation Rentals into Profitable Ventures, a guide for property owners and entrepreneurs looking to maximize their returns in this evolving vacation rental landscape. Through strategic investments, creative branding, and operational insight, Adam continues to grow his portfolio while helping others unlock the potential of real estate and digital marketing to fuel long-term wealth. Without further ado, let's welcome Adam Chronister to the show. Welcome, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Great introduction. Appreciate that. So,
Absolutely. So, in your own words, obviously, I shared a lot about you just from kind of a biography perspective. But, who is Adam, and why did you venture into the crazy world of real estate?
yeah, well, as you kind of alluded to, like I feel like I live a a blessed but multifaceted life, right? Um, I would say the venture into real estate was something that was early early on in my life. And it's one of those things that like I think my spouse and I, and she deserves as much of the credit as I do, especially on the real estate side. But it was one of those things we ventured into really early, honestly.
Hmm,
I don't even really know, like, I can't pinpoint the time and date where we thought, like, hey, let's get into real estate. We just kind of both knew, coming into a marriage and as a young couple that we wanted to set up our life, our future kids, with a financial bedrock that the two of us, didn't necessarily have growing up, right?
sure.
Um, so, our first venture into that, honestly, was initially we were going to go into the house hack, right? Our very first
Hmm.
home. And we went down that route. We actually put an offer on a property here in Spokane, Washington, where I'm based. Um, Long story short, we got three-fourths of the way through. This was our first venture into home ownership. And we ended up backing out of that deal. Just there's too many problems with the property. It was a knob and tube and not in a great neighborhood. And so we didn't end up going the whole house hack route. And for anyone that doesn't know, that's where you buy a duplex, you live in half and rent the other half out. But what we did instead, which I think was a good solution for us, is we bought a conservative, 2-bedroom, 1-bath home in a good rentable area. Lived in that, knowing that this is not our forever home. This is,
Yep.
it was cozy. Did that with the full intent that, hey, we're going to pay this down a ways, and then start playing Monopoly, right? And that's exactly what we did. And that first little home, in fact, just interestingly, the property that we bought in Costa Rica, not this last February but the February prior, we actually liquidated our first home, our first investment property, to buy a dream property in Costa Rica. And right. And so, I think that's the key to a lot of this stuff, whether you're investing in real estate or stocks or cryptocurrency or, starting a business, is I think the key to all of this, no matter what your path is you have to think about the big picture, right? You have to think, how is is what I'm working on today going to impact me 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years down the road? And if you can keep that mindset, I think it really helps build perspective. And that can really set you up for success, right? So
Yeah, you mentioned something that I think is really important for our listeners out there, which is, liquidating, something that's maybe of lesser value or in your own intrinsic world is of lesser value in order to continue. I call it moving up the rungs or moving up the stack,
yeah.
right, of properties. Because let's be honest, in a perfect world, we don't want to continue buying properties that are smaller and smaller.
Right.
We want to do the opposite. We want to buy properties that are either larger and larger or better location. You keep stepping up.
Yep.
So I think that's great that you mentioned that, because that's a really important strategy that I see in today's market in particular.
Yeah, to that point, we just got done with our first 1030 exchange. We have most of our properties in Washington State, and we are right on the border. We're on the border of, for those that know, Spokane is on the border of Idaho, right? And so it's I call it the tale of two cities, right? They're two very different states. And there's some strategic geopolitical type stuff where we are looking at Idaho as probably a better long-term place, or typically it's one of those states that tends to be a little bit more lenient on landlords as opposed to Washington. Washington's getting a little bit more challenging. So to your point, yeah, we just recently liquidated a duplex that we had in Washington State, traded it for a triplex in Idaho, and hope to probably eventually do more of those, every few years. And so yeah, like to your point, it's, I think sometimes when you buy a property, be it your primary residence or an investment property, you think, especially with a purchase that big, you think, oh, this is going to be forever. But none of this has to be. And probably if you're a growth mindset, shouldn't be forever. But with most assets, be it stocks or real estate, it is good to go in with 3, 5, 10-year timeframes, because that's really where you see your returns in most of these, wealth building assets, at least from my experience.
Which brings me to my next question for you. So, what is your favorite part of the home buying, selling, investing process, if you will?
Yeah. I don't know so much about my favorite part, but my favorite aspect, I think, of buy and hold real estate is the fact that there are multiple ways to build income, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things with a buy and hold property is obviously, you can rent it and have income, monthly MRR that's coming in that way. And so that's great. Like that in the short term is, and when I say short term, I'm talking, I'm talking like 10, 15, 20 years, right? In the short term, that is a great strategy. Because you can, you essentially can have your renters, finance and pay the mortgage on those properties if you're doing the math right. But also you have the option to sell that property and get equity, right? A lot of people, they will get into real estate, especially the buy and hold, so that they're getting that monthly revenue. And then at the point that they're looking to retire, they start selling these properties off. In fact, the property that we just recently acquired here in Idaho, a triplex, that's exactly what the previous owner was doing, right? He was at retirement age. He decided he wanted to buy a boat and sail his family across the globe. I'm a little jealous, I'll be honest, but give it another 10 years, maybe we'll do the same thing, right? And so that's what I like about the real estate asset is you're not just locked into one type of income asset, right? Now, stocks are similar slightly if you're getting into specifically like a dividend stock. So a dividend stock, I can get some of those dividends. But typically it's not going to be as versatile, right? Normally with stocks, you're getting you're getting a balance on the return and the growth. And dividend stocks are typically a much smaller ratio, but that's the thing I like about real estate too, and and it's tangible, right? It's something, in most cases, especially if you're doing it local, where you can touch it, you can feel it, so.
Yeah. I think I also envy that owner that you were mentioning that sold off, to vacation world. I think the beauty of real estate investing is it can be a passive or it can be an active play, or a
Yeah,
little bit of both.
right.
And
Depending
I
on how you
think,
structure it.
yeah, and I think that for the people out there listening to this that are looking for a side hustle, right? Ask yourself, is that side hustle going to be a side hustle that's going to set you up, for legacy and for all the things and freedoms of life that you're looking for in the future? Or is it just another job? Because
Right.
I would argue that just adding another job to your portfolio isn't really helping you gain any freedom,
Mhm.
any
Right.
um any more tangible assets and things that, not putting you any closer to your goals and dreams, that for that matter. So
Right.
um, I appreciate what you're sharing in that regard, because I think, again, too many people fall into that trap of, well, I've got, this other side hustle, but it's like, is that side hustle really a side hustle,
Mhm.
passive side hustle, or is it, an active side hustle and you're basically working two jobs?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and
um,
it's a balance too. Like, it's you know, it's not that it's not work, right? And to your point, like, you do have to kind of go into this figuring out like what you want to get out of it and what you want to give up, right?
mhm,
We're at the point where we still self-manage, right? And this is a conversation my spouse and I constantly have. I'm more on the let's hire property managers, and she's more like the DIYer. Obviously, if you're a DIYer, you're getting a lot more income, right? Because with the point you have a property manager, for instance, we do this in Costa Rica just because it's impossible otherwise. But here locally, we're doing a lot of the management. We're not doing everything, right? So we will call maintenance people for plumber issues, heating, AC, but turning over the place, painting walls, that kind of stuff. That's all us, right?
yeah,
But if you want to go more passive, you can hire property managers that are going to do a lot of the work. But there's learning curves there too, and there's also pros and cons. But what I tell people is, um, there's very few other vehicles where you could have a day job and run, a property, nights and weekends and make it work, right? So it's
mhm,
not that it's not work, but if you compare it to like a 9 to 5, especially if you just have one property on the side, you're getting started. There's very few other vehicles that compare as far as the time commitment, at least from our perspective. That's been the case. That
yeah,
changes as you grow your portfolio.
yeah.
Um, so
But that's then by the time you grow your portfolio to that place, you're probably talking about hiring a portfolio manager and
mhm.
all that at that
Right,
point.
and that again, knowing your goals, like, so our a lot of our goals were initially were like we have 2 kids, right? 6
Mhm,
year old and 9 year old. And the state of things, it's like, hey, we don't exactly know what retirement's even going to look like by the time we're ready to call it quits. And so we've always joked, but it's not exactly a joke. We've always joked, hey, we need to buy a property for each kid, right? Because this might pay for their college. This is going to be potentially where they're going to do their summer jobs, right?
mhm,
um I think it's a great, as a family, I think it's helped instill a particular work effort, or like work, um, essence into our kids, because they see us. I mean, they come with us, and they have a task, sweep the floor if we're turning over a property. And so we've been able to use that experience as a learning experience to our kids, to be like, hey, like nothing comes,
mhm,
in life for free. There's work, but also there's benefits. Like our kids, in fact, this weekend we're taking our whole family to Tokyo, right? And
mhm.
so we wouldn't be able to do that if we hadn't set up a certain lifestyle. But at the same time, it's like it's work hard, play hard. And
Yeah,
so So yeah, it like anything else. I think sometimes people go into things like property or other, business vehicles and think, oh, this is just 100% passive income. And in my opinion, there's no such thing as 100% passive income. But I think there's more or less passive incomes. And so ultimately our goal is like, how can we take our most passive income sources, right? For me, that's my business. I run a digital marketing web design agency. For my spouse, she's a teacher. And how can we start migrating that more passive based income source into less passive income sources? And now we're to the point where we've just about replicated, one of our incomes with real estate, and we're doing pretty good. We're on a higher income, bracket, so that if one of us needed to retire, if I got in a bad accident or my wife decided she was done being a teacher, um, we have options, right? And honestly, like money is great, like, but options, in my opinion, like that's the key, right? Having options that helps me sleep a little bit better at night.
Yeah, options equals freedom. And I think there's not a single person out there that doesn't want some semblance of freedom. So
Right.
I'm curious, you know, I'm sure you've been in some interesting negotiations over the years. How did you handle maybe your most difficult one? If you want to set it up and maybe share how you handled that.
Yeah. I mean, we've been through a few. Ironically, this last engagement where we had the 1031 exchange, I'd always gone into those really nervous, like, so that for those that don't know, it allows you to essentially, you can kind of think of it as exchanging a property. And
Mhm.
what it does is it prevents you from having to have unnecessary taxes. You're not having to pay capital gains. The challenge with that is you have a short window. I think it's, I don't know, roughly 45 days or something, to sell and then purchase. And so I went into that really nervous, just thinking like, okay, this is like go time. Like we have to sell and then we have to buy, and like the stars have to align. Luckily that went a lot more smoothly than I anticipated. But we've had other transactions where like, you know, uh like for instance, well, I guess, yeah, we've had a few where it's like you get buyers and they're asking for the moon, and at some point you got to just be like, no, we're done negotiating, like take it or leave it. um and I think I don't know, I think once you've done this enough, like you you don't get as attached to the properties or the deals, because you just think of it as a vehicle, right? It's a little bit
Mhm.
different than when you're buying a primary residence or making an offer, because it's like, hey, this is where I'm going to raise my family. This is the neighborhood I want to be in. Um, I've learned to become a little bit less attached over the years on the investment properties. And I think that's the key a lot to investing as well, is trying to remove emotions from it, because in that process there's a lot of emotions. I think that's the biggest thing that ruins deals, be it the buyer or seller, is you get, and this is why I'm still a big proponent of real estate brokers, right? Like
Mhm.
I think they play a really important role for a lot of people, because they are kind of the intermediate between the buyer seller agent and the seller agent, to help keep emotions, at a level bay, because everyone thinks that their property is like the best thing since sliced bread. And and then somebody comes in like, well, I see issues here and issues there. So, so you have the buyers, obviously they want to pick it apart, so they're getting a better deal. So there's a lot of emotions that get involved. And I think just going in knowing like that is a potential trap or issue on both sides of the fence, can better prepare you for an acquisition or a sale.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the people think their property is, with worth the moon and the stars, right?
Right, right.
I think I run into that almost with every single seller. right?
Of course. Yeah.
There's very few out there that really get it.
Right.
So I've done some things or imparted some things into my practice, like requiring an upfront appraisal and inspection before
Mhm.
listing a property if I'm going for a listing agreement. Little tactics like that
Right.
that further validate, our ability to price or just understand the market, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. Inspectors are key too. Like, gosh, man, I think that's one of those things. Even with this latest property, like we noticed some things here recently where like the inspector missed some stuff, and it's like, and so that's where like too, like the longer you do this, the more you can kind of figure out who's who inside of your community. Like
Mm-hmm.
who are the go-to inspectors? Who are the the rock star real estate agents? We've been with our same agent for forever. I mean, for a decade, right? And he knows anytime we want to buy and sell a property, like he's our guy. But on the flip side, like, he's the first to say, "Hey, I found this really cool pocket deal," or, like, and so with a lot of this stuff too, like, especially in the, in the process of buying or selling, like, knowing who your team is helpful. Even if you're just an individual buyer, like that can really help make or break deals as well. And so, I never advise. Some people like going at it alone, at least on that stuff. But I like having advocates on my side because they're gonna help me determine um, what's going on in the market. They're gonna, give me some good guidance. They
Mm-hmm.
typically know who's who. They can tell the background story of, okay, this is why they're selling, so that might give you
Mm-hmm.
leverage. Those kind of things. Like for instance, this triplex that we just picked up, because we were able to get the backstory, we realized that this owner had 3 other triplexes all conjoined, and so we kind of put our hand and said, hey, we're interested in buying more. So when the next one becomes available, like we'd love to like discuss it before it goes on market. And so those kind of
Mm-hmm.
relationships, with the right players can also be a huge advantage. Um, so
Yeah, especially with off-market properties, which are
yeah,
delicate to begin with.
absolutely.
That's fantastic. Okay, so we're gonna shift gears now to the last segment for the show today, and it's kind of some of our final questions that'll encapsulate our time here this morning. So let's say, Adam, it's your 80th birthday. Who is there? What is going on?
Man, it's a great question. Honestly, like I don't know. Like I guess my vision, like my goal, one of my goals in life is to have a packed house when it comes to like an 80th birthday or a funeral or one of those kind of things. I had a good friend who passed away at a young age, and it was tough, but like, I mean, literally, like there were people outside of the doors of the sanctuary of the church, and I was like, man, this is, it kind of sucked that he had to leave Earth early, but like, it's like he couldn't have done it any better way. And I'm like, if that's all I get to, like, that's what I want. Right. And I'd still have a lot of work to do. Right. Like I'm at the stage right now where I'm really trying to be cognizant of, adding value to other people's life and trying to do so in a way where I'm not trying to get something back. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
being transparent and like, being in business, like I don't, honestly, I haven't always been that way. A lot of times I go into things transactionally thinking, okay, I'm going to give to see what I can get back. But that's something I'm really working on here as of late. Like, how can I reach out to people without any inclination of getting anything in return? How can I add value to other people's lives? Knowing that the universe, God, will return that in kind, right? And so yeah, that would be my hope, is that it would just be one of those scenarios where at my 80th, there would be a lot of people around me, just maybe expressing how I was able to impart something into their lives.
That's powerful. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't dream of having a large crowd at your funeral? We're not talking about death here today,
Right,
though.
right.
But a large crowd at your 80th birthday, you know,
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
that's neat. Okay, here's the next zinger. Now imagine it's your last day on Earth. You can only preserve 3 items in your time capsule. What are those items and why?
Oh, that's a tough one, man. Wow. I guess thinking about it, like right now, like I'm a big reader, so I have a big library of books that have inspired me from, Greek philosophy to religious texts to personal development. And as of late, I've been documenting every time I hear a good quote, I've been documenting it in a notepad, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the goal, I don't even know exactly what I'm going to do with it, but I'm thinking at some point it would be nice to collect that, collate that, and give that to my kids. And so that's something that I would want to put in a time capsule.
Yep.
Maybe consolidating like all of the different opportunities I've had to be on like podcasts like this, just to consolidate that part of me out to the world. That would be maybe number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And number 3, maybe just pictures, either photos of my family and the experiences that we've had. Like I think those would be kind of the 3 things, like really just telling my story and telling the things that inspired me to keep achieving, to keep going on, right?
That's fantastic. Yeah. All great answers, by the way. 3 answers that, most people end up coming back to family, something
Right.
oriented with family or legacy in the future. So
Yeah.
I really resonate with that, Adam. Okay, final question for today. What is your definition of a real estate rock star?
My definition of a real estate rock star. I think it was somebody who is not just good at navigating the territory and environment of real estate and in all of their different verticals, but somebody who really understands and appreciates the process, right? I think ultimately success is one part effort, one part results, but also one part like satisfaction and enjoyment, right? I think you have
Mhm.
to, not every day you're going to wake up and be, be excited about what you do. But if at least a portion of what you do can be satisfying and fulfilling, I think you're already ahead of the race at that point. And so that would be my kind of my definition.
Nice, nice, very well put. Adam, how can our subscribers and listeners out there, how can they find and connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm not hard to find. Honestly, I got a fairly unique name. So if you search Google for Adam Chronister, you'll find me. Outside of that, feel free to check out our website. You can get a hold of me there. It's enleaf.com. That's ENLEAF.com. That's where we do a lot of our work. As mentioned in the forerunning, we work with a lot of businesses in real estate, travel, hospitality. So not only is this something that I do as part of my day to day, but it's an avenue and vehicle that we help others with as well, getting their presence out online. And so, yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone inside your audience and discuss ways that I might be able to add value to what it is that you do.
Mm, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Adam, for joining our podcast today.
My
We
pleasure.
appreciate all the golden nuggets you've left us with. We'll see you again next week here on the Real Estate Rockstars. Thanks and have a great week, everybody.